Okay, in Grimerica tonight, we got a special one. We got no Graham. So that's too bad. I'm sure you guys will be kind of sooky about that. But we got Adam sitting in, friend of the show, fellow Grimerican. And we're excited because we got Leon R. Walker here to join us. He just wrote the book Broken, The Survival Instincts of a Child, which is kind of his debut memoir. And Leon's an advocate, a motivational speaker, and he's taking his message of hope and survival to our podcast. And as a survivor of numerous childhood traumas, including child molestation, sex addiction, and domestic violence, Leon is sharing stories from his violent upbringing to motivate and inspire today's at-risk youth. April is both Child Abuse Prevention Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So we're happy to have Leon here. Julia Brown over at the publishing was happy enough to send us your book, and we're thrilled to have you here, Leon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Appreciate it, you guys. Happy to be here.
A lot of audio gremlins visiting us to get started here tonight, but finally we can get going. So maybe can you just sort of give us a rundown of I'm pretty sure most of our audience is probably not gonna have heard of you quite yet. So maybe we can kind of give a rundown of who you are and how you got here. And I know most of our audience is probably the ones that don't have kids are probably just kind of out of teenagehood. So I mean, a lot of this is going to be a really great message for our listeners.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm originally from East Cleveland, Ohio. Dealt with a lot, get into that, but I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I had failed the test to for the military. I failed it 4 times. And on the 5th time, I did pass the test. So I decided to join the Navy. I wound up serving 32 years. I've been all over the world. I've sailed the seas, the oceans. I've been on 11 deployments. I've been to the Persian Gulf numerous occasions, conflicts throughout the year. I was in the Persian Gulf when the USS Stark, if you guys get a chance, look it up, USS Stark was bombed by 2 missiles in 1987. And I'll talk about that later on in my second book coming up out this fall. But been on 5 ships, have 15 years at sea. My job in the Navy was a navigator for about 21 years. And after that, I became an executive level leader. I have 3 kids, 3 god kids, and I am divorced. I'm now a motivational speaker, like you mentioned, and an author. I love people. I love helping people. I love talking. I love inspiring people. I am 53 years old, 53 years young. I run often. I just started getting back into running. I ran 1 marathon a few years ago. I'm about to run another marathon in May. So if there's something that you want to do in life, always push yourself. Don't sit back and be comfortable. I tell you that for those listeners out there, get out of your comfort zone. Make yourself uncomfortable. For me, fortunately, it's kind of weird to say, but I was fortunate enough to be uncomfortable as a kid, and I'm remaining in that uncomfortable zone. So it helped me grow and helped me become a stronger person, both physically and mentally.
That's interesting because I mean, a lot of people. I'd imagine there's a lot of people that share your same story that kind of take the other road.
Yeah, they do. They go the other way. Some people never overcome the obstacles that they run into as a child. And some people repeat those obstacles as a child, as an adult. They hurt others, they hurt themselves. People wind up in jail, people wind up dead. And you're right, some people never get a chance to right themselves. And that was my main focus, to right not only my wrongs, but the wrongs that as far as what they have done to me, to make me the person that I was slowly becoming. So yeah, you're right about that, Darren.
What kind of was there a defining moment that you can look back on? Like you're kind of, you're a kid, you're going through all this terrible stuff. Is there like, can you look back on one moment that it just sort of, you were like, well, like, did you kind of come out of that experience as wanting to did you always have this drive and this vision, or was it something that sort of kicked in at some point?
Okay. So what happened was, and I like to tell his listeners, do it now, but study your parents. We go through life just knowing our parents. We go through life just loving our parents. We go through life just being around our parents, but there's not really a time where we study our parents. My breakthrough came a couple of times. Aside from being molested and raped and being addicted to porn early on, my breakthrough came when I first learned, I was always called dumb, stupid, and slow. I was told that you'd never be anything. Even by my senior counselor, I was told you'll never pass the test to get in the Navy. You'll never get into the Navy. You'll never get into the military. But my breakthrough came, oddly, it was a weird time when after I got molested, I needed an outlet. So my parents were going through hell. My parents were fighting, arguing, beating each other. I had to, witness my mother get her face smashed in, her teeth knocked out. So I was looking for outlets. I was looking for somebody to help me through this pain and this agony. But what happened was we had a dog that would have puppies often, and I was kind of like terrified. I didn't know what to do to help her have the puppies. So one night I went out there, it's probably 2 a.m, to help her with her puppies, help her deliver her puppies. And that became comforting to me. Aside from everything, all the hell I was going through in the house, that became something that I'm like, wow, I'm not dumb. I'm not stupid. So I helped my dog deliver her puppies. And one litter, she had 13. And it was like she had become accustomed to me coming out there to help her deliver the puppies. It was kind of weird that I would know around the time my dog was going and was, delivering. And I would help my dog deliver the puppies often. And this was something that really helped me out. Aside from delivering puppies, I became really entrenched in and loving animals and pets, except reptiles, except snakes. But we had frogs, we had hamsters, we had gerbils. So animals became an outlet for me. Animals became a way for me to think that, hey, I can be somebody. I can, I'm not dumb. I'm not stupid. Somebody does love me. Aside from my parents and my family, I felt like my animals love me too. And I know a lot of people out there feel that way. That's why they turn to snakes. That's why they turn to frogs or reptiles or dogs. I had the same thing. Now, there was another breakthrough. That was the first breakthrough to get me through the agony and the pain that I was going through from being raped by pouring myself into animals. Another breakthrough came when my mother had a friend that after my parents got divorced, my father had to move out. And so his name was, I called him Chaz in the book. He was gay, and this is one thing that helped me understand not only myself, but people. People are people. You don't judge people. You don't look down on people. And with Chaz being gay, he was the first gay person that we had met. And so he was my first mentor. And that's what I talk about in my book, Broken. Chaz taught me about life. He understand that things would be okay. He made me understand. He talked about racism. He talked about loving other people and then liking people, not because of the color of their skin, but because of who they were. So this was a defining moment in my life. So I was in the 6th grade, and he helped me grow into being a young man by understanding life. I had a lot of aggression. I had a lot of bad thoughts. I had a lot of evil ways. And at the same time, while I'm growing, coming from being molested, being raped, and being fondled by my uncle, Chad helped me get rid of a lot of aggression. What he did, I would talk to him, which made it easy for me to relate to adults at such a young age. I told him what I was feeling. I'm feeling this urge to watch porn because I become addicted to porn too. I'm feeling this urge to watch porn, and we don't have porn. I know it's wrong, but I want to do it. I had to find a way to release. Well, even though Chad was gay, he never touched me. He never touched me at all, but he told me, he's the one, sadly, maybe, and unfortunately, but he taught me masturbation. And it's kind of weird to say that was a turning point for me, but it was, because it took my mind off of being raped. It took my mind off of being molested. It took my mind off of wanting to watch porn all the time, because in a weird way, I got into myself. In a weird way, I didn't want to get into the young girls that was in my neighborhood, because being raped by an older person made me like older women. So the young girls in my neighborhood couldn't offer me anything. And this is what I experienced at 8, 9 years old. So I was an angry, hurt, evil, devilish little boy. But I had a couple of turning points. And then another one was my senior year in high school. My back was up against the wall. I had failed the ASVAB. ASVAB is this Armed Services Vocational Aptitude and Battery test that you take to get into the military. You need a minimum of a 31 to get in. The max score you get is a 99. I'm a slow learner. I've always been a slow learner. And I had to find out a way to pass this test because my back was up against the wall. Aside from my senior counselor telling me you never pass the test, you never make it to the military, that hurt me. But the the thing is, I had to finally dig down deep in my soul and find out, who am I? What can I do? What chance do I have in life? Nobody else was giving me a chance, so I had to give myself a chance. And that's when it all turned around, when I said, you know what? I'm not dumb. I'm not stupid. I had to start believing what I was telling myself instead of believing what other people were telling me. So I studied, I buckled down, I studied my butt off for this test. First time I took it, I got a 6. The second time I took it, I got an 11. I got a 19. And the fourth time I took it, I got a 30. My 5th time was a major turning point in my life, because after that time, had I not passed it, I wouldn't have been able to take the test again for another year. Now, being in the inner city, you don't have many things to look forward to. You have drugs, you have prostitution, you're hanging out on the streets, you have truancy, foster care, orphanages, and those were things that I did not want in my life. So I finally had to apply myself and take this test one last time. And the last time that I took it, I scored a 31, which I got the minimum to get into the military. And that was a major, of course, I had a lot of turning points after I got in the Navy, but that was a major turning point in my life. That was the most important and the most influential turning point in my life, when I was able to pass that test by 1 point and join the Navy.
How old
now,
are
when
you?
you were joining,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, just how old were you?
So I started taking tests at 16, and I kept failing it. 17, I kept failing it. And then when I finally did take it, I was 17, the summer of June of 1983, I finally passed the test. So I was 17 when I finally passed it. And I shipped off to boot camp November 21st of 1983. I turned 18 a month before I shipped off.
was your reasoning for going and signing up for the ASVAB to go into the military as a self-discovery, or trying to continue that fixing process?
So it was a little bit of, it was both. Self-discovery came when I said, you know what? I saw my uncles in the Army. They talk about the Army. My father talked about the Army. And that made me feel like, you know what? I want to be a man like them. I really wanted to go fight for this country. I was a very patriotic young man. As odd as it may seem, you know, you don't find many kids 8, 19 years old that are patriotic. But however, I guess the trials and tribulations I was going through so early on made me think like an older person. It made me want to get out and be somebody, aside from being called dumb and stupid and being told I never amount to anything. I wanted to become a military man. I wanted to impress my uncles. I wanted to impress my father. And so joining the military was a way for me to grow up quick. I knew I could become a man. I knew that they would hold me accountable. And I knew other things I wanted to do. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to get away from Cleveland. I wasn't suited for college at all. I was afraid of exams. I was afraid of tests. So the SAT, it wasn't a question of me taking the SAT. I wasn't going to take it. I avoided taking the SAT. So I knew then I'm not going to college. So only other way I had to take the test to get in somewhere was the military. So the military was a great way for me to prove to my uncles and my father that I could be somebody. I could be a man, and I could be very patriotic and fight for this country, which is what I wanted to do. Aside from that, getting away from my demons, yeah, it took me away. But you got to remember, when you join the military at such a young age, you don't get carded overseas when you go into the bars. You don't get carded when you go into the clubs, because you, as a ship, we pulled in. We had 300 men on that ship, you know, with the pockets full of money. They're not going to card you. So I was introduced to the biggest party in the world. I'm talking about alcohol, drugs, women, violence. So I was reliving everything that I went through as a child. I wasn't molesting or raping people, no. But I was reliving the porn, the older women, the excessive sex, the big parties, the alcohol, you know, being devilish, being evil, you know, because you meet people from all walks of life, and you learn from people from all walks of life. I was 18 years old when I first learned about Wiccan. You know, I was 18 years old when I first learned. I had friends in the Navy that knew about witchcraft. That blew me away. These guys are 18 and 19 years old doing witchcraft in the Navy. People say, you know, you're in the Navy, we're here to protect you all. That's what we do in the military. But at the same time, who's there to protect us in the military? I had friends, like I said, that knew witchcraft, that were studying Wiccan. I had friends, not saying that those were bad things, but I had friends that were buying opium in the Middle East, buying hash in the Middle East, we were exposed to everything at such a young age. And you think, people say, yeah, we're safe in the military, but also, I mean, I'm not saying we're unsafe, but you get exposed to a lot.
Yeah,
you get exposed to a lot that you don't ever expect to be exposed to.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that at all. That's kind of even blowing my mind a little bit. I would have thought the military was pretty like straight and narrow for an 18 or 19-year-old kid.
Well, it can be. Don't get me wrong. The military is one of the greatest, is by far the greatest decision I've ever made. But you got to think about it like this. If I join the Navy from Cleveland, I get sent to boot camp to Great Lakes in Chicago. My first duty station is in California. And then we leave California and we head right to Panama. I'm 18 years old. We head right to Panama. And what's in Panama? Back then in 84, cocaine, women, prostitutes, alcohol, okay? And we have pockets full of money. Back then it was a lot. Now it's a lot. But then so what are they gonna say? Here, you guys, you're 18 years old. You're old enough to fight for this country. We're not gonna not let you come in this bar. That's the main thing. When we, aside from keeping the sea lanes open, we establish friendships with host countries. They love the military when it comes into town. When a military ship pulls into to any town, country, continent, whatever, they're gonna spend at least maybe a little less or more, maybe a little less, but upwards of $1 million being in that port for 4 to 5 days. They charge the ships for water. They charge to handle our sewage. They charge to there's a brow that connects from the pier to the ship. You get charged for that. You get charged for electricity. So when a ship comes into a foreign port, it's open arms, wide open. They don't ask you how old you are. None of that. You don't get in that. And another thing, the older guys are taking in the younger guys, breaking us in per se, whether it's drinking all night and seeing if you can work the next day, whether it's having women all night and seeing if you can continue to keep the same women the next day and the next day. This is around the world. I tell people I've been in the longest party that anybody can possibly be in, from 18 to probably my mid-40s is when it slowed down. But don't get me wrong, the military is a great place to be, provides you education, it provides stability for families. It's more cleaned up now, but back then it was a big rodeo. I mean, it was a big rodeo. People tried their best to get into the military. It was easier to get in back then because they had a thing called Cat 4s, Category 4, where you can just take the test. If you scored a 5, you can get in. But those are some of the hardest workers, some of the guys that didn't have it mentally, they didn't have the aptitude to learn, and I was one of them. Those are some of the hardest working people, because not only do they have something to prove to stay in the Navy, they have something to prove to their family that said, hey, you're dumb, you never get in the military. And they wind up getting in, But yeah, it's one of the biggest parties. I had the greatest time of my life. It taught me a lot. I'm not saying, there are some negative things, but it taught me a lot. The military will make you a leader at a young age. It will teach you responsibility. It teaches you how to be prompt. Back then, there was a lot of divorces. There was a lot of drugs. There was a big drug epidemic. But I didn't have to partake in those drugs, and I didn't. But I did partake in the alcohol, which is a legal drug. I did partake in the prostitution, which was in some countries, it's legal. It's what they do. It's how they make a living. And in companies like the Philippine Islands, if a young lady doesn't want to be a prostitute, she gets punished for it. I don't care if we're in there in the Philippine Islands for a week long. If you want that young lady, I'm speaking of women that are of age, if you want her for every day for a whole week, that's what they're going to do for you, because we bring money. They want money over there. They want people to come to visit their country just to, boost the economy. And that's what we did. So it wasn't about telling us, no, we couldn't do anything. That was never going to happen. But now that, they cleaned it up a little bit, the world is being cleaned up a little bit as far as, being politically correct, having respect for yourself. The military is a lot healthier now. They crack down on smoking. They crack down on obesity. They crack down on drugs. When I went in, you can get busted for drugs 3 times before they kick you out. 3 times. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it was cocaine, heroin, meth. It did not matter. You can get busted 3 times on the piss test, and they even at the 3rd time is when you get kicked out. So I saw a lot of guys get kicked out for drugs, hard drugs. Like I say, we pull into Bahrain is the way they pronounce it in the Middle East, and we're being offered opium. We pulled into Turkey. We pulled into Turkey. You know, you get offered all of these drugs. You know, Panama was cocaine. Cocaine in Panama, you get into a bar, every bar had cocaine in it. You all don't know that because if you went, you may not have been exposed to it. But every bar, not only did they have alcohol, the alcohol was not what made them money. It was the cocaine. You pay $21 for the prostitute, she gets $1, and the $20 goes to the kingpin. That's how it was. And if you wanted opium in the Middle East, you got opium. If you wanted heroin overseas, you got heroin. If you wanted marijuana in Haifa, Israel, you got marijuana. That blew me away because one of the biggest things in Israel, aside from the Wailing Wall and the Sea of Galilee and the banks of Jordan, they smoke a lot of marijuana in Israel. Israel is a beautiful place, lovely people, great food, great entertainment. Touring was great, but they will smoke marijuana over there. A lot of people didn't know that. I had no idea. I just thought it was all, biblical verses and where Jesus was anointed and all those things. We rode camels and everything, but they smoke marijuana over there. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the military, and if I had a chance to do it all again, I would do it the same way. But you can get exposed to a lot in the military.
Was that a surprise to you? Did you walk in and you're just like, oh, God?
Well, you know what? I didn't say, oh, God, because it was like the way I grew up, with being molested and raped and fondled sexually, it was like, I was like, cool, because...
It numbs it, sort of. You were able to run away from that? Was it kind of that sort of thing?
No, actually, I ran more towards it because we were exposed to more sex. You can get porn in the streets in Italy. You can get porn in Japan. So those things I had at 8, 9 years old, going into the military, it was like, okay, I can kind of like take a break. But yeah, it was a shock at the same time, but it was like those demons came right back because I had never dealt with those demons when it came to porn and sex. I had never dealt with them. They were still inside of me. All I did was suppress those demons. So when I saw it again in the military, I'm like, wow. Okay, at home, I had to hide when I was watching porn, right? 8, 9, 10 years old. Now I'm in the Navy, I don't have to hide. It's what they do. It was part of the culture. I wasn't shocked about anything. That's why it was so easy for me to transition into the military with the my egregious ways, because more than anything, I was welcomed with that.
Was that was that mostly from a lot of the cohorts having the same egregious ways, or was there like a pattern of sort of that childhood abuse that carries into was that sort of rampant as well at that time, do you think, or what do you think? Or is it just...
my cohorts had the same problems, same issues. We had the same problems when it came to, childhood abuse. We can all relate and talk about it. Some of my friends come from foster care they were in the Navy. Some of my friends come from juvenile back then. You go to court, say for instance, you had a felony, say for instance, you had a DUI, or you robbed a store, or you broke into somebody's house. Back then in the 80s, you go to court and the judge say, hey, you either go to jail or you go to the Navy. So we had those same type of people, just like me, like-minded people that were doing the same thing as a child. Now here we are all together in the world's most powerful military. So we worked hard and we played hard, but the majority of us thought just alike. The majority of us were raped and molested. The majority of us come from foster care and orphanages and off the street and homeless shelters. Yeah, there was a lot of kids that came in out of there, from the same background that I came from. So we were all able to relate. But now it's like you get paid in the military. You go to the most exotic countries for free. You got medical and dental. We didn't care about college. Those are the same type of kids that I was around. Nobody cared about college in the military back then. Not at all. It was like, wow, I'm free. I'm out of the orphanage. I got out of jail. I'm not in foster care anymore. Nobody's beating me up. Nobody's harassing me. You know, nobody's raping me. Now I'm in the military, but guess what? That same mindset when you come in the military, those guys that were rapists, those guys that were stealing and breaking into houses, guess what? That came back to them again. Just like my sexual demons came back to me, those guys still had those demons in them. They never fixed them. They came back. And instead of robbing somebody in New York, instead of robbing somebody in Philadelphia, instead of beating somebody up in Florida, they did it in the Philippine Islands. They did it in Australia. They did it in Italy. They did it in Singapore. So none of us got help with that. That's why you see a lot of guys get out of the military and they got PTSD. They have social issues. They have mental issues. And because they never deal with those demons. I never dealt with my demons until I was 50 years old. Now in the Navy, when you retire, you have to transition out. You have to decompress. The Navy SEALs go through it. The Green Berets go through it. The Marine Recons go through it. Even I went through it. You have to decompress. You go see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a chiropractor, the eye doctor, the dentist. They check your whole body and you transition out. Well, with me, a lot of times when you transition out from the military, there's a time where they say, hold on, time out. We need to stop. They ask you certain questions, and based on how you answer that question, it tells the doctor which way they need to go and how they're going to determine your illness. So that's when I found out that I had PTSD. That's when I found out that I had addictions as a child that I never dealt with. That's when I found out I never let the anger of my mother abandon me. I never let it go. My mother became addicted to crack in the 80s. We lost my mother 3 times. The first time we lost her is when we lost the house. The second time we lost her is when she moved away. And then the third time we lost her is when she died. But yeah, so
this is all on the exit interview of your military. So this is like your what are they like decommissioning or debriefing. This is in your debriefing. So this is like, so everyone who goes in the military, you have to go through these steps to get out. Sort of, that's part of your debriefing or your discharge or whatever.
It's part of your debriefing and your discharge, because what happens is the government has funds set aside for our disabilities. People have heart attacks in the military. People have brain injuries in the military. People develop PTSD. People develop personality disorders, migraines. So they have to make sure we're good to go when we get out. If we're not good to go, then they have to treat us. That's why you have these VA facilities that are so filled with Army vets, Navy vets, Marine vets that are still in there, that are in nursing homes, because they didn't find out that they had all these issues until they transitioned out. What happens is you're so well taken care of in the military. You're so active. You're going every day. Whether you're deploying, you're shooting people, you're killing the bad guy. Once that all stops, depression kicks in. Once depression kicks in, people start picking up bad habits, smoking cigarettes again, drinking alcohol even more, right? They start picking up, the anger issues come back, because now you don't have that camaraderie anymore. You don't have those friends around anymore. And so depression,
purpose, right?
Right, you don't have a purpose. Right, there you go. Your purpose is gone. So it all starts when you start to sit down on your butt and you don't do anything, you don't remain active. And a lot of us put on weight because in the military, you are required to maintain a certain weight, a certain body fat. Twice a year, we get tested. That's not enough, but we get tested twice a year. So when we get out, people go back. It's called resocializing. You go back to your old ways. So a lot of people go back to being addicted to drinking and sex. Even though we were doing it in the military, we had to maintain a certain standard. So it wasn't like out of control, because the moment it got out of control, it's like, oh, I can get kicked out now. So let me maintain this. Let me suppress it just a little bit. Let me drink just a little bit. Let me watch just a little bit of porn. But when I get out, it's wide open. But at that point, you have nobody to watch you or care for you anymore. So, you kind of like, you fall off. A lot of people fall off when they retire. They do.
Yeah, and I guess when you're at service still, you get those sort of breaks where you're out at sea for a month and a half or 2 months and you're not sort of exposed to it quite as much.
Right. So what happens is, the longest I've been out to sea without pulling in was 83 days. It was 120 degrees. We were in the Persian Gulf, patrolling the northern part of the Persian Gulf and the southern part of the Persian Gulf. Back then, when they were shooting missiles at the tankers, blowing up tankers, sinking them with oil in them, sinking them with natural resource, whether it be grain, whatever, coal. So It was like 83 days was the longest I had gone out. And yeah, you're right. We don't have much out there but food and work on the ship. So it's kind of cleanse your soul. You kind of cleanse your, ease your mind. But guess what? The moment you pull back in, the first thing we go after are those demons, the alcohol, the sex, the porn. And for some people, the drugs.
And then it's finally you're 50 years old and you do this exit interview. So this is the first time you've talked to a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
Well, the first time I talked to a psychiatrist was in 1987, May 18th, for about 2 weeks, because on May 17th, 1987, when you guys get a chance, look it up, the USS Stark was hit by 2 missiles. USS Stark was hit by 2 missiles. You'll see a picture up there. The ship is sinking and it's burning. Well,
I got the picture.
You wish for. I always wanted to help somebody save a life. I got that chance. In the military, you're required to go to firefighting schools. Almost everybody in the Navy is a firefighter at one point in time in their life, in their career. So I was on the fire team because I'm like a rather macho guy, very masculine. I want to do all the hard jobs. So I volunteered to be on the firefighting team. I was kind of told, and then I liked doing it. I went to the schools, we did well. Anyway, the USS Stark got bombed by 2 missiles on May 17th, 1987. We were at, the USS Reed was at the southern part of the Persian Gulf. The USS Stark was at the northern part of the Persian Gulf. We got the call to go and assist them. It took us about 12 hours. We had both engines online. We're doing 25 knots for 12 hours. We get there, and the ship is tilted, it's sinking, it's smoking. My firefighting team was the first team to go on board that ship. And what I saw changed my life forever. I was 21 years and 7 months old, had no idea what I would see. But when I got there, I saw 37 dead men burned to death. We picked up feet, we picked up hands, we picked up fingers, we picked up heads. We didn't know what to expect when we got there. We were there for so long, death became the norm to me. Have you ever smelled burning flesh? If you never smelled it, it's one of the worst smells you will ever smell, and you never, ever forget it. Those 37 men died from that missile attack. They were burned to death. A lot of guys were burned to the floor, the metal floor. We had to peel them off the floor, and in doing so, one guy we peeled off the floor, all of this off his forearms, and the right side of his jaw came off. We had to scrape him off to death. So we found a lot of guys that were drowned within the ship because it flooded. They died from being boiled to death. So in the Navy, you have these things called emergency escape breathing devices. They don't have them anymore. They're used to escape from a smoke-filled space. So if your bedroom or your studio is filled with smoke, you turn around and you put that on, and it gives you 1 minute to get out, and you out. You can breathe inside of it. Well, they use those to firefight, and that's the wrong thing to do. And what happened was the heat was so intense, it burned to their face. So we had to remove that equipment off, and off came these guys' face, a lot of them. So we stayed there for a day. We shipped the bodies off. We stacked them up. We put toe tags on them, and we put them in body bags, and they put them on another ship in the freezer. And we stayed there. I was terrified to stay there overnight because it just felt like the devil was hovering over the entire ship. Well, the next day started the psychiatrist process. And up until this day, even now, I still dream about 2 or 3 of those men that I had to recover. We recovered 37 of them. I carried 37 of them. And it was one guy in particular that I still think about, and I'd still dream about, because he was about 6'3", and I didn't know that I was stepping on him when we were fighting the little fires. My friend said, "Hey, Leon, look down. There's a body under your feet." And I looked down, and he was there. Everything was burned. But I mean, his clothes, he was burned from inside out, but his face was all gone. It was just a black skeleton. And I went down to pick him up to put him in the body bag, and my arm hit his mouth and his teeth fell out. So I had to stand him up, and we stood him up. His head kind of fell down. You can see the insides of his neck, no eyeballs. Picture that. Imagine looking at something like that. And that's a face that I still see to this day. Even when I think about it, I used to get chills when I talk about this, but I don't get chills anymore. But I kept that in for my entire life, from 21 years old to 50. But at 21, that's when we started talking to psychiatrists to answer your question.
So were you just sort of shell shocked, or maybe you're still 21 and you got too much bravado and you sort of maybe kind of headstrong your way through that psychiatry?
Yeah, headstrong, too much bravado, both of those. You hit it right on the head. Because it's, when you in the military, back then you come in, you're macho, you're cocky, you're arrogant, you want to prove everybody wrong. There was some, now don't get me wrong, there was some guys that lost their mind that night and that next day, and they were discharged out of the Navy because they didn't recover. Well, I had an innate ability to separate myself from hurt, from harm, from pain, and from reality. And I get that from my mother. And I didn't realize that I was processing that when I was going through this USS Stark incident, but that's what helped me get through that time, because I kind of blocked it out. I kind of suppressed it. And again, talking to the psychiatrist, I was like, Doc, it's not a big deal. We were here to do what we have to do. But I didn't realize that it was etched in my memory for the rest of my life. And then moving forward, as I turned 50 and started talking to the psychiatrist, she wanted me to relive the story. I never relived it. I tucked it away. Just like I tucked being raped away. I tucked being molested. I tucked it all away. But I tucked that away until I was 50. And she made me write it over, we talked about it too, but she made me write the story over and over and over again. And that's when I started tearing up. That's when I started telling her, you know what? I dream about these guys every single night. This is what I see. I had to draw her pictures. So that was her way of getting out of me, and she did, because I'd never dealt with it. But, the bravado of all of that, and being strong-willed, strong-minded, and the fact that I inherited that from my mother, I was able to keep it down until it was really time for me to discuss it. And that's when I did, when I was 50 years old.
Do you think the recruiting process of the military is kind of geared to get people that have that innate ability through their experiences to handle things like that and dissociate and deal with it while in the moment where they have to handle something?
No, not at all. You know why? Because if they do that, if they ask those questions, they get the answers, they're not going to get a lot of people. Because this generation is pretty soft, unless you meet a young kid that has an old soul. But if the military started doing that, we wouldn't be able to man up the military. Right now, I think we have to put in an average about 44,000 a year into the military, the Navy at least. Years ago, it was 35,000 per year. But now I think it's like 44,000 a year that we put in. But no, if they were to ask those questions, they were to give those kids those type of tests, a lot of them would fail. That's why you have now special forces do that. They get to a certain point where if they don't ask the questions, they take them through obstacle courses and physical toughness, mental toughness. They make them cold and wet for hours, and those are guys that break and quit. So that's their way of weeding out the weak people. But the only way to weed out the weak ones mentally, are the ones that don't have the aptitude to learn, is by giving them the ASVAB. If they take their test and they pass it, guess what? The recruiters are going to do their damnedest to get them into the military. So they're not going to have time. In fact, they're hoping and wishing these kids don't have any mental type of injury or illnesses. Because if they do, they're not joining. So the military, the recruiters have a quota per month. Every person has to put in 1 to 2 people per month. They are not, I was a recruiter. I did it for 4 years. So I know. They're going to hope and wish that these kids don't have any type of mental problems or plates or screws in their body, because if they don't qualify.
So can you take us through that sort of process of dealing with your demons? You kind of, and I'm curious to know, in retrospect, if you think do you think there would have been any benefit to just dealing with those demons at that time at 21? Or was that, were we not there yet as a culture?
No, as a culture, definitely back then wasn't there yet at all. We didn't even, I was ashamed, to be honest, I was ashamed of those demons. So I didn't want to deal with them. And in fact, I was the only one that knew about my own demons. However, those demons were my addiction. Those demons were what made me, would allow me to have fun. Those demons were my outlet. If I was angry or tired from work, I go smoke, I go drink, I go watch porn. I would try to chase as many and sleep with as many women as possible. So those demons were like an aid to me. Those demons were, just get me through life. And the culture back then, it wasn't even about talking about demons. they laugh at you if you tell people you had demons. I couldn't do that. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older and more mature, and it's not that I'm embarrassed about it, but I want to tell my story to give back to people. Say, hey, as a young man, you have these demons. You have to deal with them, because those demons are the reason why I couldn't stay in relationships. Those demons are the reason why I couldn't remain married. Those demons were why I was always cheating. I was afraid to commit. I was mischievous. I was devious. So talking about demons back then, the demons back then, to be honest, were the things, that was the thing to have. It was good to be a whoremonger. It was good to have to drink all night long and then come to work drunk. It was good to do those things. Some guys, we looked up to the guys that snorted cocaine and didn't get caught. We looked up to guys that smoked weed and were still able to work at nighttime while we're out to sea. We looked up to guys that brought marijuana and opium and hash on a ship and got away with it. You know, they were like our heroes. You know, it's like coming from the inner city. My heroes were the guys that were the pimps, the hustlers, the drug dealers. Those were the cool guys. You know, you look at the rock bands back in the 70s and 80s. Those were the guys we looked up to. Even coming from the inner city of Cleveland, East Cleveland, my parents made sure we were very diverse and not just being human beings, but music, right? So not only did I listen to the Temptations, the OJs, but I listened to Kiss. I listened to Blue Oyster Cult. I listened to Chicago. I listened to, you know, the Bee Gees, the Doobie Brothers. I listened to all those groups. So those, you know, the rock stars were probably your heroes too back then. The way they womanized and they tore up bars and they drank and they got on stage and tore up guitars and womanized, you know. So just back in the Navy, the demons were like our best friend. They were my best friends. You know, I didn't want to be nice. Being nice in the military back then got you in trouble. Being nice got you ran over. You were left behind if you were nice.
So then fast forward, you're 50, you're doing your debriefing. So do you go into that knowing you want to deal with your demons, or she just kind of pulls, or your doctor, I think you said it was a she, right? She was able to pull that out of you. Now, did that start with the trauma and then go into all the childhood stuff, or like, did you go in wanting to deal with all that, or did it just sort of start dumping out like
started dumping out? I did not want to talk about it. I didn't want to deal with it. It started with me telling her about my mother, that, you know, my mother died she was addicted to crack. She died in 2012. It started off by that. And I told her, I said, I'm still pissed off at my mother. I love my mother to death. My mother and I had a very close but very far relationship because I was still angry about her losing the house. I was angry about her leaving us, sending us across town to live with somebody we didn't know. I was angry about her, you know, getting high. You know, I was angry about my mother selling the jewelry that I bought her from the Middle East. I was still angry with my mother at 50 years old. I told my mother that I loved her when she was on her deathbed, and she smiled. The lady said, your mother hadn't smiled in 6 months. She was in California. I was here. I flew there to see her, and I walked in there, and she said, your mother smiled for the first time in 6 months. You must be her son. I said, yeah, and that's when I told my mother I loved her. She had developed a severe case of diabetes. They had removed both of her legs. This was all from smoking crack. So my therapy started off by talking about my mother because I loved her. I loved her to death. I was just so angry with her because I've always wanted a mother. I felt abandoned for a long time. And every relationship I got into, not only did I fall in love with the girl that I was dating, but I fell in love with her mother because I loved that mother figure. I loved the nurturing. But when my mother abandoned me, I was afraid of abandonment. That ruined all of my relationships. But my therapy started with talking about my mother, and she made me understand. She said, well, the fact that your mother was on drugs, that wasn't your mother. There was the drugs that you were dealing with. You weren't dealing with your mother. And that's when it all started to open up for me. I started crying, and then it started going into my childhood. She's asked me questions. I talked about the USS Stark, and I talked about the anger that I have with the guys on the ship that I could not save, that I wanted to save, I was unable to save. They lost their lives, family was destroyed, you know. So yeah, it started with the therapy. It started with talking about my mother and my parents' divorce, because I too am divorced. I repeated the same thing that my father was doing. You know, I became an extreme person. I became verbally abusive. I became mentally abusive. When I spanked my children, it was like to the extreme. I make them strip down naked. My father would do that to us. So I kind of repeated the behavior. So that all came out of my therapy, and I just talking to her about the things that I never wanted to talk about. I never knew why I was acting the way I was acting, but it was because I was holding those demons in. I never dealt with them. I was best friends with those demons. Those demons gave me what I thought I needed in my life, what I wanted, but it wasn't what I needed. But those demons were my best friends. They were the people that I call them people. They were the people that I could turn to when I was upset with my girlfriend or when I was upset with my wife. I turned to my demons to make me feel better. I turned to my demons to cope with reality. It became a coping mechanism for me. If I was in an argument with my wife at the time, there's a couple of things I can do. Be verbally abusive, or go smoke some cigarettes and drink for the rest of the night, or go cheat. And those were my demons, and that's what I did. It made me feel better. I was so cold-hearted, I didn't feel bad about cheating. And I talked about that in my therapy. I was like, that was my way of dealing with reality. That was my way of dealing with pain, to hurt somebody else, to put my pain off on them. I could be sitting next to my girlfriend knowing that I just slept with another woman because my girlfriend pissed me off, and there's nothing she can say to me right now to make me mad because I just cheated. I know the worst thing you can do to a woman, a couple of things. You can cheat on them, you can give them a disease, or you can get somebody else pregnant. And I did that too. So my therapy was a whole bunch of work on me. It was 7 months long, once a week. Sometimes I would go twice a week. But I started feeling better when I started relieving all this stuff off of my mind, off of my heart, off of my soul. And I started to grow, and I started to see, man, I feel better now. I feel better. I had like 3 or 4 different people inside of me, 3 or 4 active people inside of me. And I had to just get rid of all of them by talking, accepting that I was, a damaged person. I still had that little kid in me that was raped and molested. I still had that angry, devious, devilish little kid deep inside my soul. I never let him out until I was 50 years old.
If there's somebody else out there that's like having these same type of demons, like what is your suggestion as the first step? Is it to go to a therapist? Is it to, be more open with your friends, yourself? Is like, what's a good step?
The first step is to identify them. Write those demons down. What are they? My demon is, I like methamphetamines. My demon is, I like porn. My demon is, I like bestiality. You got to look at those, write them down and look at them. And it should scare the hell out of you because it scared the hell out of me. And you can find a close friend that, that knows all your worst secrets, right? And you can tell that person. Also, you tell people, I found a few people that I can tell that I did not want to hurt or I did not want to let down. I said, look, man, I'm trying to get over these things, these demons. And they were like, what are they? And I'd show them, they're like, man, I didn't know all of that. Because in the military, you're required to have high standards. You're required to be a leader. You're required to be engaged with your people. So you can't let people see that side of you. I had to find somebody else that I can trust and say, hey, man, this is what I'm dealing with. So the first thing you need to do is I wrote them down. I wrote them down and I accepted it. I said, this is who I am. And then you have to tell yourself, I don't want to be this person anymore. I'm tired of it. Even though the porn and the liquor and smoking and stuff felt good to me, and having all the women that felt good to me, it was killing me on the inside. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't be truthful to anybody. I was lying to everybody. You have to be tired of it too. You write it down, you have to be tired of it, and you have to be willing to go to the next side. What's next for me in life? How can I get forward, move forward? And also I had to, I said, you know what? I got to stop lying to these people that I'm leading. I didn't tell a lot of people what was going on with me, but I said, you know what? I can't tell these people to do this and I'm not doing it. So I had to live the lifestyle that I really wanted. I had to live the lifestyle that was out here for me. I had to live the lifestyle that God had planned for me. I tell people, I don't go to church, but I believe in God. I have a great relationship with God. Whether you have a great relationship with God, with Buddha, with Wiccan, and whatever, you believe in somebody more powerful than you and somebody that you love, somebody that you do not want to let down. And that's who you tell your worst secrets to. Even if it's God, even if it's Buddha, if it's Wiccan, and whatever the case may be, you tell that supreme being, you tell that powerful force, you write them down. I wrote mine down, and I put them up on the wall. With me, my relationship was with God and a few close friends. I said, I'm tired. I can't. I'm ready to release myself from this. And so that's when it started happening. And now, don't get me wrong, when you're ready to get rid of those demons, they're not ready to leave you. They're not. Oh no. So you have to let that person know. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, hey man, I want to get on the computer and watch some porn. No, don't do it, bro. Okay, that's all I needed to hear. My best friend on the other end said, don't do it. I'm not going to do it. And these are people that are always readily available to you. You got to have these people that you can call at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But my belief was in God, and my belief was in my closest friends that knew my darkest secrets. Now, like I said, it didn't happen overnight. If I wanted to get up and go have a drink, I'd call my friend, hey man, I'm fiending for some alcohol. You know, I'm fiending for a couple of women right now. I want it. No, don't do it, bro. Don't do it. Now, these were people that had the same addictions that I had that got over them as well. So keep yourself surrounded by like-minded people. Keep yourself surrounded by people that are in recovery as well. You want to get to where they are. Yeah, right. Right. They want the best for you. That's the key. Write them down, identify them, and tell your best and closest friends that have gone through that, or somebody that's going through it with you, do it together. It could be a husband and wife. It could be a brother and sister. But you have to be ready to make that change. You have to want to make that change. If you don't want to make that change, therapy is not going to help you. A psychiatrist is not going to help you. A psychologist is not going to help you. To me, those people piss me off. They listen, they write it down, they listen, write it down. There was no connection. I had connection with my therapist. I did, because she actually listened to me. And when she pissed me off, she would let me stay mad. She would sit there in front of me. A lot of times I get up and walk out the office. And she said, well, I'll see you next week, or you can come back in if you feel like it. And I'm like, man, I can't be disrespectful to this lady. Now, that was another thing my father always taught me, to never be disrespectful to people. It was kind of odd because I was disrespectful to women by cheating, but verbally abusive just basic respect to my elders. And my therapist was an older lady, thank God. If she was younger, I would probably have been attracted to her on my way out. I was still dealing with demons, but I would sit there and she would let me vent and let me talk. But to answer your question, I wrote my demons down, and I gave a letter to my closest friends to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you help me? And those are people, like you said, people that want the best for you, like-minded people that have already gone through those demons, and it was kind of like hurting from it. Instead of having a beer, they'll have some water. Instead of having a juicy burger after smoking some weed, we'll have, maybe vegan, something like that. But I started changing my life to be towards a healthier lifestyle, mentally and physically. And over time, you start to feel better. Over time, you start to look better. Over time, you start to think better. And that's what I wanted and I needed. My mind became very clear. But to answer your question, I wrote them all down and I shared it with people.
Now, you mentioned before how as a child it was a breakthrough moment to be able to rear puppies and find that. Have you found this continued benefit in writing this book and being able to bring your story and help people in the same way?
Yeah, I definitely found it, because for a long time, I never wanted to write a book. I didn't like writing. I didn't like reading. I didn't read my first book until I was 50, and my first book in its entirety until I was 50. And it was a book called A Child Called It, because I can relate. He was abused. I didn't even know I was abused until I was 50. Had no idea. But that was the first book I read. And so my friend asked me to write a book. That's how my book came about. And I said, well, I'll think about it, because I was talking to him about helping young men and women off the street, getting them into his program. He had a ministry. And so he said, why don't you just write a book? Because he interviewed me. And so I started writing it, and it became therapy for me. It became very therapeutic, because I was reliving the story. I was writing about it. And then I could actually sit here and laugh and smile about my story. And for the people that are listening out there, even if you don't want to think about writing a book, just start writing a journal. It can turn into a book. But the biggest thing is that your book can help somebody out. It can save somebody's life, because a lot of people, we all go through the same thing. We all have a lot in common when it comes to drugs and addiction. But I chose to tell my story. I don't mind talking about it, because I know it's going to reach somebody else. Just like you guys are doing podcasts, I may one day want to do a podcast, because I like the way you guys set up. I like the way you ask your question. this podcast can affect me. I might want to do podcasts. So, you never know what you don't know, because I tell people, don't set your mind on one thing for your entire life. Because I know some doctors, I know some dentists, I know some lawyers that are very unhappy, that have low morale. So going to what I'm saying is that allow your people, your friends, your kids to be free thinkers, to be free, and don't make your kids, concentrate on one thing, being a doctor, being a lawyer, and going to school for 10, 15 years, and then they wind up being unhappy in their profession. So what I'm saying is that now that I've written a book, it could be therapy for somebody else. They can read it, and it may prompt them. Matter of fact, I've had about 10 people over the last year to say, "Hey, man, you're courageous for putting your story out there. I would have never done that. I'm too scared. But reading your book, it helped me think about my past. Reading your book, I had a guy call me today. He said, I did a interview today with a radio station, the Tom Barnard Show in Minnesota, and he listened to the podcast, or he listened to the interview, and he said it made him think that about his family, and he made some phone calls, found out the reason why his father beat him so bad is because he didn't think that he was his son. So my book has opened up a lot of feelings in a lot of people, and now they want to write and tell a story. The biggest thing about this is that if you don't want to let it out and you keep holding it in, that means you're embarrassed about it, or you're going to continue doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're going to repeat those bad habits. So me putting this book out that could possibly reach thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people, I don't know. I don't care about making money. I want to tell people myself, I want to help people. I want to be able to heal people. I have a gift to talk to people and inspire people. So the thing is, writing a book, if you don't want to put it out there, you hold it in, you're gonna repeat that behavior. I guarantee you. I was one of those people that repeated the behavior for almost 45 years. Till I started talking about it. I used to tell people a little bit about my life just to help them out. This was when I was 19, 20 years old. I just have a simple conversation. They come to me and like, hey man, I'm dealing with this. Well, hey dude, guess what? I'm addicted to porn too. And we laugh about it. And so they were like, wow, it was that easy? I'm like, yeah, no big deal to me. But to answer your question, it was very therapeutic for me. It opened up a lot of things that I had forgotten about. It helped me apologize to some of the people that I had verbally abused. It told a story about me that people never knew, and it inspired people that had the same demons and was chasing the same addictions that I was chasing. So yeah, very therapeutic, just like helping my dog deliver her puppies.
Did you end up with journaling? Did you take up journaling as a practice after writing the book? Like, does journaling fit in there at all? Because I mean, journaling's pretty therapeutic too for finding demons and dealing with them.
Yeah. I do it daily. It's like I don't plan to do it, but you have the notes on your iPhone, the little note thing. I could be driving. I will, because my memory is rather short in most cases. A thought comes to me and I pull over and I'll put it in my notes. And I'll come back home and I think about it, I'll look at it, and I'm like, wow, there's something else for me either to discover, something I can talk about, something I can, help people, somebody else, help somebody else out with. But a lot of times I talk to my friends, and things that have come to me today, matter of fact, is the way I had, probably spanked my kids. My one friend said he didn't spank his kids because his father spanked him so hard. And, I was the opposite. I spanked my kids just as hard as my father spanked me, and I regret that. And he told me that today, and I started journaling about that, and writing it down, and like, man, I can't go back and fix that, but I'll never, ever do that again, because it was something that I, in a weird way, not paid for, but I didn't pay it for, but I carried it forward in my life. And it was just the wrong thing to do. I didn't know any better.
Oh, yeah. You didn't ask for that momentum and energy. It was dropped upon you. And, children learn. You repeat behaviors. You have to deprogram yourself.
You got to deprogram. You have to deprogram yourself. And this book helped me deprogram myself, being therapeutic, delivering the puppies, think about that. It all helped deprogram myself. Journaling, Darren, like you said, journaling helps me deprogram everything that I've gone through, because if I have to write things down and look at it. And if it looks scary to me, it's like, wow, even though it's here, when I see it, it gives me a different perception, of course.
That's, and The other thing to think about, I mean, me and my wife and I, she watched most of it. I only watched a few of them, but there was just recently the Ancestral Healing Summit. Was a webinar, and they had a bunch of things all day where you could watch speakers speak and present, and it's all about ancestral healing, and a lot of the, a lot of this stuff's pointing to the things, I think I've heard numbers as high as 7 generations that trauma can travel forward and backwards. So I mean, if you think about it that way, I mean, maybe writing this book, you might have just broken a cycle that's been repeating itself for several generations. I mean, if you believe in energy like that, and you've made a couple comments during this interview that makes me think that you do.
Yeah, Dan. And another thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was about done. The other thing I was going to say is it's never too late to say sorry either, right?
Right, that's true. Never too late, and I've been doing that too. I was reading this book after I read my first book, A Child Called It. I started reading a book that was recommended me to my close friend Nancy Manning. It's called. It's by Dr. Ryan Leaf. A really, really easy read. Not a thick book at all. Thick books scare me. It's probably 100-some pages, but it's called Unlock Your Brain, or Who Turned Off My Brain, or Who Turned On My Brain, by Dr. Ryan Leaf. So what you just said about doing damage generations down the line, the way she talks about healing that, the way she talks about fixing that is by having positive thoughts, changing your blood cells, instead of delivering those bad blood cells into your offspring. If you deliver those bad blood cells into your offspring, guess what? They're going to deliver them to their offspring and offspring and offspring. And that's where you get that 4 to 5, 6, 7 generations down the line, because we never fixed that. By fixing it, you can just talk about it. You can educate people on, hey, don't be, this is what happens if you're addicted to porn. Porn goes to wanting sex. Wanting sex goes to having sex. Having sex goes to being promiscuous. Being promiscuous goes to wanting more sex and possibly getting a disease and possibly, damaging somebody else's life. So it goes from one thing to the next. But if you can educate people on the bad things that you've gone through, the bad thoughts that you've had, the addictions that you had, you can heal and change those blood cells, because blood cells regenerate themselves just like that. So I may not be able to go inside you, Darren, and say, hey, I'm going to change these blood cells, but I can tell you what can happen if you're verbally abusive. I can tell you what can happen if you hit your wife. I can tell you what can happen if you grope somebody. I can tell you what happened if you say bad words to people. And you're like, okay, Leon, I got you. Let's talk about it. And you stop doing that. So that next person won't take that on. And then when they do finally hear from years from now, it sounds foreign to them. It's like, man, what the hell is that? Like these kids nowadays, if you yell at them, some of them go into a ball, right? They curl up, they cry, they run away. But if somebody wants to yell at the three of us, it's like, all right, dude, whatever. That's because we were raised like that. We were built like that. But these kids are not built like that. So you have to change that by talking to them, by communicating and educating them on it. You educate other people, the screamers, about not screaming at people, because it's going to affect those kids. But screaming at us is it's actually funny when people scream. It'll piss us off. It might make you want to fight. But at the same time, it's not going to make you curl up in the ball and quit. But these kids now, this generation, you yell at them and they go tell on you. And they go tell the teachers and the principals and the superintendent. I've been through that. And I said, well, I can't do that, because these kids, even though they're smart mouth kids, they're still going to talk smart. They're going to still curl up in the ball when you yell at them. They're smart mouth, but they're not mentally tough. But you can make them mentally tough. You can train them. You can slowly get them there by building up their confidence. But I was too rough with my kids. I'm easing down on them now a whole lot, because I've seen what happens when you yell at them. I've seen what happens when you threaten to hit them or something like that. They can't take it. They're not used to hearing that language. That's our language. That's not their language. We can talk to each other like that all day long. It's not a big deal. And then we go drink a beer or smoke a cigar or smoke some weed. We cool. These kids, they're going to go do ecstasy. They're going to go pop some pills. They go smoke some weed. You think about it. I haven't seen it. I've seen it with the white kids and the black kids when it comes to R&B, but I guarantee you, these kids, this generation, these kids are not tough, but they have an old soul. I learned this from being a teacher for 2 years in the ROTC program in the inner city. The school was predominantly Spanish. a few blacks, a few whites, but these kids have an old soul. I listen to all the R&B songs that they're singing nowadays. It's not like it used to be, but these songs are talking about hurt and pain and love and abandonment. They are. The new rock and roll songs might be talking about the same thing. You look at the country and western songs. Country western always talked about love and happiness and hurt and pain, but these kids are going back to that. They can understand it through music. They can understand it through conversation, but when you get mad and angry at them, they don't know what to do with it. They're old souls when it comes to words and music. But after that, when the music is off, they kind of lost, because all they got is Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. That builds up their courage. That builds up their self-esteem. You know, so that's one of the biggest things we have. One of the issues we have in this world today is the communication, because you can communicate with somebody far, far away, but yet you don't communicate with anybody that's right there in your own household. You know, it's kind of weird, but yeah. But
yeah, social media is a huge problem.
Huge. They don't know how to communicate straight up, face to face. They shy away from it. But keep in mind, these kids have an old soul. If you sit down and talk to them one-on-one, if you're real with them and honest, they'll listen. I guarantee you that. You can give me any kid in any state around the world, and I can sit down and talk one-on-one, man to man, because they have an old soul. They will understand it. Even though they have the Snapchat and social media stuff, listen to some of the songs. If you have kids, listen to the songs that they're listening to now, and listen to the words that are coming from those songs. Listen to the words. Those words were said back in the 60s and the 70s. They're coming back. These kids are struggling with that, because they're like, well, I understand this song, this music, and this is something, Dad, that you grew up on, but they can't understand. They don't have the work ethic. They don't. Well, we have the music, the lyrics, and the work ethic. We got it all.
Yeah, we were just lacking the emotional intelligence, I guess.
Emotional intelligence, right. And so these kids don't have that either. But we have the ability to go into that emotional intelligence. We do. Compassion, passion, empathy, courage. We have that. The EMIQ. We have that. But you teach these kids about that, like, oh, you know, they have a lot of, they don't even have empathy. One big thing they do have, they got sympathy. They sympathize really quick. They want a hug. They want you to pat them on the back. They want you to give them something. That's right. But we can go back. We do have the EMIQ. We do have that passion, compassion, courage and things like that. Empathy.
Well, I like what you say there, because I never really thought about those aspects as being really positive. So it kind of makes me think that, as generations go, that there's going to be a swing back. There's going to be a middle point somewhere in between this hardness and this extreme sympathy.
It's coming back. It's like you say, the pendulum is swinging. It's probably about right here, 75%, maybe 50% of the way back. And that's what these kids lock onto. So if you ever want to get into a kid's mind, understand the music that we listen to and relate that to your conversation with them. I guarantee you can get their attention. I've done it for 2 years and it blew me away. I could sit there and talk. When I was teaching ROTC. I could teach firefighting, navigation, leadership, shipbuilding. Guess what? They liked it because it was different, right? I told them sea stories. But when I stopped teaching, I said, okay, now we're going to have real talk. Now we're going to talk about relationships. Now we're going to talk about divorce. And these kids were 14 to 17 years old. You know what they did? They put their phones down. I didn't have to tell them to put their phone away. They put their phones down and they scoop their chairs up and they listen. They say, we want to hear these things. But the problem is, it's not in the curriculum. These teachers are young. These teachers don't even know how to talk to these kids like I do. They can't, because they don't have it. They're almost in the same generation. So the teachers are not allowed to talk to them about real life experiences. I was doing that. I made that part of my weekly conversation every Friday with the kids to talk about real life situations. I told them what can happen to a female's body if she gets an abortion. We talked about that. We talked about divorce. Nobody talks about that in high school. They don't. But you're right. The pendulum is swinging back slowly. And if you want to get to some kids, if you want to hire somebody to to help you with the podcast, if you want to interview them, sit down and talk to them about real life issues. The eyes will get big, the ears will perk up because they don't get that. You know why? Because the parents are older and they don't think that that's part of a relationship they can have with their kids. But it's essential that you have that relationship with them. That's the only way you're going to reach them. The yelling part don't work.
Yeah, it's like a thing that's sort of missing from the days maybe when we were more raising kids as a group than in a nuclear family. You sort of had those crazy uncles around as well. You had the sort of the parental figures, and then you had other adults that were just sort of more chummy, and you got sort of both sides of that relationship, as opposed to now just parents stuck with kids and everyone's going crazy and stressed out. And
that's right. Parents, you got the chummy side, you got the other side, and now you got parents stuck with kids. But you know what? Parents are stuck with kids, but that's why they're so happy to drop them off at school and be done with it. Be done with it. I took a kid's cell phone last year in May. She freaked out. But you know the worst part about that? I was like, you can freak out all you want, and you're not getting your phone back. Her mother called the principal. The principal came to my classroom and said, why did you take her phone? I said, sir, she's breaking the rules. He said, yes, I know, but her mom called me. I said, so what? I had to talk to her mom. I said, look, I took your daughter's phone. You know why? She said, well, I said, because you don't take it. You never take your daughter's phone. So I took her daughter's phone and I said, look, how does it feel? She didn't like us, but she was breaking the rules. I said, you breaking the rules. And she decided she's going to join the Navy, right? So I said, you were wrong, but you called your mother and told your mother to take your phone. Your mother called the principal. The principal come talk to me. Now I'm in trouble because you broke the rules. So in that instant, we didn't have the different type of parenting mechanism right there. Both of them was like chubby, cully, you know, and here I am, the hard guy in the middle, like I needed some help. But I gave her phone back. At the end of the day, I held on to it. Had I broke down and gave it to her when her mother called, I would have lost the battle. Yeah. She would have repeating that. But a lot of these parents, what I'm saying is a lot of these parents don't know how to relate to their kids. They're afraid to relate to them by being tough on them. But you don't have to be tough on them. You can talk to them. Like I said, you talk to them about real life stuff. Well, you know, you shouldn't use the phone. That's breaking the rules. You can wait to text when you get out of the class, whatever the case may be. They'll listen, but the yelling and screaming, and then when these kids know they're wrong, they know that if they tell their mother and they cry, their mother's gonna feel bad. There comes the nurturing part. Okay, I'll call the principal and we'll get your phone back. And then the principal gets into his little nurturing phase and feeling all bad and upset because the kid is unhappy, the kid is mad. So what? You got the kid broke the rule. When you go to a job and break the rule, you're gonna lose money. You're gonna lose time. You might even lose your job.
Well said. So before we wrap up here, Leon, where can we get the book?
So you can get the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's all over, bro. The way my publishing company did it, they put it. It's everywhere. It's Kindle. You can download it electronically. If people want to get in touch with me, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Leon R. Walker. You can Google me. I got a lot of my military stuff on there. My retirement ceremony is on there, some of it, you know. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Leon R. Walker. It's easier to order the book on Amazon. For some reason, it seems quicker. You know, Amazon is huge. It gets you what you want, when you want it, and as fast as you want it. But yeah, I'm starting to do another tour around here. I'll be going to Cleveland and Chicago for my book tour and branching out after that. But yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere really where that's selling books, whether it be on a Kindle or e-reader or, you know, paperback or hardcover. But anyway, anybody's listening, you can be an author. It's not hard. You got content. You can have a book. You can write a book that's 10 pages, talk about being addicted to alcohol and how you overcame that. Great book, powerful book. You can do it. It's not hard. I just kept writing and writing and writing. I started writing June 6th of 2016. I didn't stop writing until August 11th of 2016. I wrote for 65 days. And when I was done data dumping my life, I had 1,000 pages. So I turned it into 4 books, maybe 5.
Jeez. Well, I can't wait for the next one to come out. And when it does, give us a ring and we'll have you back on.
Sure, bro. I enjoyed it, being here with you guys. I know I talked your heads off.
That's what it's for. That's what it's for. And
Yeah,
if you decide you want to start up a podcast, shoot us an email and we'll see what we can do to help.
definitely. I keep that in mind. Hey, I'm doing more than one thing. Always multitask.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Okay,
Yeah,
Leon. We'll have a
All right,
wonderful
Leon, it was
night.
wonderful talking.
Nice talking to you guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Come back anytime.
I will. I look forward to it. Had a good time.
And that was a chat with Leon Walker. What'd you think, Adam?
Oh, I thought it was good. I liked his, his journaling. I've had experience with therapists in the past, and I sympathize with them where you have just somebody there that you can't connect with. So being able to have an option to self-journal, to discover, to sit down with your friends, just, a roadmap that has worked for somebody else, that's kind of a cool thing. It's a nice little tool to stick in your belt.
Absolutely. And I like the delivery too. I think it's an important message to sort of get that delivery from as many different angles as possible. And it sort of drills you into everyone's head that, we're all sort of, eking our way through life the same way. And it's okay to talk about it.
Well, and one of the things I love that he's doing, and I remember this from my kid, it's oddly similar to his. I had a teacher named Mr. Randon, and he was a veteran. He was Navy guy, and he was at Pearl Harbor. So on the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, he's telling us about how his ship was bombed, how he woke up in the water covered in shrapnel. He finds his best friend dead, and then he shows us his dog tags around his neck. And it's interesting because they had the same thing. We had the teacher of the class was upset because we didn't get taught the curriculum that day, but that honesty of that situation in real life and what that person's gone through and what it meant to him, it really changed who I was as a person. It's something that I still think about to this day. So I love that he's sharing a story that so changed his life. It's going to do that for other people too. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Big thanks to Leon for coming on the show. Big thanks to Adam for helping me do this while Graham was off gallivanting or absent without leave, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, awesome. Check out Leon's stuff. Get the book. Check out social media stuff. While you're on the internet, maybe you could head over to grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for support today. Of course, we are 100% listener supported, and we love you guys for supporting us. And do all the stuff in the news in the show notes. There's a bunch of different things to do in the show notes. Do all that stuff. Other than that, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Buckface just rolled in.
You still streaming?
Yes. You gonna give him a calf shot?
A fresh calf shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I got the wrong earbuds in.
I've got a hidden calf gift floating around somewhere on my computer.
No calf shots. I'm early because we mercied the team in the first half, so the game ended early.
Nobody knows what that means.
7-0 in the first half.
In the first half?
Yeah.
Don't you have periods?
No, it's ball hockey always halves.
Oh. Like a half a sport.
Yeah, it's weird, eh?
All right, guys, we'll be back in 25 minutes doing the philosophy show with the philosophy guy, Brandon Weber. Then after that, we're going to do an intro for 344.
Well, we might. Are we gonna?
I'm assuming we're going to.
Okay.
We might as well. Then we could do black budget stuff on Friday.
Sure.
Anyway, we'll be back.